Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English in Advance. I'm Jessica, your host for today. If this is your first time joining our community, let me just say a very warm welcome. We are so glad you found us. Here we release new English lessons every single day, and our entire philosophy is built on one goal: to help you build real, confident, and natural fluency faster than you ever thought possible. I remember my own journey learning a new language, the long hours spent with textbooks, memorizing lists of words, feeling like I understood the rules but couldn't quite make the music of the language my own. There was a point where I was good, but I knew I wasn't advanced. I could communicate, but I couldn't truly connect. This masterclass today is born from that feeling. It is designed to give you the keys that unlock that final door, to move you from simply speaking English to truly expressing yourself in it. Today we are doing something very special. This isn't just another lesson. This is a comprehensive masterclass. We are going to dive deep, really, truly deep, into the skills, the habits, and the mindset that separate good English speakers from genuinely advanced ones. This session is designed to do far more than just improve your listening. It's here to fundamentally sharpen the way you think in English, the way you structure your sentences, and the way you express your unique personality with color and precision. We will walk through detailed, real-life conversational examples, explore sophisticated vocabulary as it's actually used by native speakers, and engage in practical drills that will push you to respond not just correctly, but naturally, spontaneously, and with unshakable confidence. By the time we finish today, you will have a powerful new set of tools, a complete toolkit you can start using immediately in your daily conversations to express yourself with ease, elegance, and incredible accuracy. Before we jump in, I want to ask you a small favor that will make a big difference not just for us, but for you as well. Please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and, most importantly, click that little bell icon. Turning on notifications means you'll never miss out on one of our daily lessons, ensuring you have a consistent stream of new material to keep your progress moving forward. It also helps our community grow, allowing us to reach and help more learners just like you. Now, find a comfortable spot. Maybe grab a pen and some paper. Quiet your mind for a moment. And let's begin this exciting and transformative journey to advanced English fluency together. When we hear the phrase advanced English, what comes to mind? For so many learners, it conjures images of long, complicated, almost academic words, or dense, intimidating grammar rules that seem impossible to remember in a real conversation. But I want to let you in on a crucial secret, one that will change how you approach your learning from this day forward. True advanced English is rarely about dropping a difficult word into a sentence just to sound smart. It's much more subtle, more elegant. It's about the smoothness of your speech, the precision of your words, and the appropriateness of your tone for any given situation. It's the refined art of knowing how to choose your words based on who you're talking to, where you are, and what you want to achieve with your words. Let me tell you a story about a friend of mine. Let's call him Mark. Mark is one of the most intelligent people I know, and his vocabulary is enormous. He reads constantly. One day, he was in a very important business meeting. He and his team were pitching a new project to a potential client. The client, a very serious woman named Miss Evans, was listening intently but seemed a little worried about the proposed deadline. She said, This all sounds very promising, but I am concerned about the tight timeline. Mark, wanting to show that he understood and took her concerns seriously, jumped in. But instead of saying something simple and reassuring, he said, with a very formal tone, "Your trepidation is demonstrably palpable, and we shall endeavor to ameliorate your concerns." The room went silent. Miss Evans just stared at him, her expression unreadable. You could see her trying to process his words. "My trepidation?" she asked slowly. The meaning of Mark's sentence was technically correct, but the words were so formal, so academic, that they created a wall. Instead of building a bridge of trust and understanding, he had created a confusing distance. The flow of the conversation was broken. Later, after the meeting, his boss, who was a fantastic communicator, took him aside. He said, "Mark, I know what you were trying to do, but next time, try something like this. I can certainly see why you're concerned, Ms. Evans, and I want to assure you that we have a detailed plan to meet every milestone. Your peace of mind is our top priority." The meaning is the same, but the feeling is completely different. It's warm, it's direct, it's reassuring, it's human. This is the very essence of what we're talking about today. It's about choosing the right tool for the right job. In a casual chat with a friend over coffee, you might say, "I'm a bit tired today." It's perfect for that context. It's relaxed and informal. But in a professional email to your boss, you might write, "I'm feeling slightly fatigued after a long day of meetings and will review the report first thing in the morning." The word choice, fatigued instead of tired, elevates the tone, making it sound more professional and responsible. Let's try a little practice with this right now. I'll give you a simple, everyday sentence, and I want you to repeat the more advanced, nuanced version after me. Let's start with a simple one. "I don't like this idea." It's very direct, but in a professional setting, it can sound a little harsh, a little too confrontational. Here's a more advanced version. "I'm not entirely convinced this is the best approach." Notice how it's softer, more polite, and it opens the door for more discussion. It doesn't shut the conversation down. It invites collaboration. Let's say it together now with a thoughtful tone. "I'm not entirely convinced this is the best approach." Good. Now let's try another one. The simple version, "I don't know." A perfectly fine answer in many situations, but sometimes it can stop a conversation in its tracks. Let's try the advanced version. "I'm not certain at the moment, but I can find out for you." This version is fantastic. It not only communicates that you don't have the information, but it also shows proactivity and responsibility. It implies you will find out later. It sounds more thoughtful and helpful. Repeat it with me. "I'm not certain at the moment, but I can find out for you." Excellent. This small but significant shift from being just direct to being precise, thoughtful, and context-aware is a cornerstone of advanced communication. Beyond individual words, advanced English is about the flow of your sentences. It's about how you connect your ideas so that your listener can follow you effortlessly, as if they are on a smooth, comfortable journey. Native speakers don't speak in a series of short, choppy, disconnected sentences. They weave their ideas together using a rich tapestry of connectors, transitions, and small conversational phrases that act like bridges, guiding the listener from one point to the next. For instance, instead of just answering a question with a simple yes or no, an advanced speaker might add a phrase that acknowledges the other person's perspective, showing they are truly engaged. Imagine someone says, "I think we need to invest more money into marketing." Instead of just saying, "I agree," you could say, "You're absolutely right, and to build on that, I think our primary focus should be on social media." This phrase, "to build on that," is a beautiful bridge. It not only shows enthusiastic agreement, but also signals that you are about to expand the conversation, to add your own value. It shows you are an active participant, a co-creator of the conversation, not just a passive respondent. Let's do a short conversational shadowing exercise to really feel this flow. Shadowing, if you're not familiar with it, is an incredibly powerful technique where you listen to me and repeat what I say almost immediately like an echo. You try to match my pace, my rhythm, and my intonation. It builds muscle memory in your mouth and internalizes the music of the language. Imagine a colleague says to you, "I think we should cancel the meeting tomorrow. I just don't think we're ready." A basic and slightly confrontational reply could be, "No, let's not cancel it." It creates immediate opposition. Now, here's a more advanced collaborative reply that uses these conversational bridges. "I understand your point, but perhaps we could simply reschedule it for later in the week instead of canceling altogether. That would give us a couple more days to prepare." This response is masterful. It validates their feeling. "I understand your point," offers a constructive alternative, reschedule, and provides a clear, logical reason, "Give us more time." Now, let's try to say that together slowly. I'll say a part, and you repeat, "I understand your point, but perhaps we could reschedule it instead of canceling altogether." Now let's try it all at once, with a natural, helpful, problem-solving tone. "I understand your point, but perhaps we could reschedule it instead of canceling altogether." That smoothness, that collaborative spirit, is exactly what we're aiming for. Another critical skill for reaching an advanced level is the ability to paraphrase. Paraphrasing simply means saying the same thing but using different words. This skill is like a secret weapon for fluency, and it has multiple benefits. Why? First, it's incredibly useful when you can't remember a specific word. Instead of pausing awkwardly and searching for that one perfect term, you can just explain the idea in another way, maintaining your flow and confidence. Second, it helps you avoid repeating the same words over and over, which makes your speech sound much more interesting, intelligent, and dynamic. Let's practice this right now. I'll give you a simple sentence, and I want you to think of a different way to say it. The sentence is, "She was very happy about the news." How else could you express that idea? I'll give you a moment. You could say, "She was absolutely delighted when she heard the news." Or perhaps, for a more literary feel, "The news filled her with immense joy." Another excellent option could be, "She was thrilled to hear the news." Or even, "She was over the moon about the news." All of these mean the same basic thing, but they each add a different flavor, a different level of intensity and style. Paraphrasing is also a powerful tool for active listening. When you're in a conversation, especially an important one in a professional or personal setting, paraphrasing what the other person said shows them that you are truly listening and that you understand their message on a deep level. It helps to confirm that you are on the same page and can prevent costly or hurtful misunderstandings. For example, if your team member, let's call him Alex, says, I'm worried that with the current workload and the number of unexpected bugs we're finding, we won't have enough time to test the software properly before the launch. Instead of just saying, okay, you could paraphrase to confirm your understanding. You could say, so, if I'm hearing you correctly, your main concern is that we might have to sacrifice quality in order to meet the deadline because of the high workload and unforeseen technical issues. This is brilliant. It gives Alex a chance to say, yes, that's exactly it, or to clarify his point. Well, it's less about the workload and more about the complexity of the bugs. It makes the conversation a collaborative effort to find a shared understanding. Let's practice that. I'll say something, and you try to paraphrase it as a question to confirm understanding. I'll say, I just think that our current marketing strategy is spending too much money on traditional ads and isn't reaching our younger customers online. Your paraphrase could be something like, so what you're saying is we should reevaluate our budget to focus more on digital channels that connect with a younger demographic. This skill is absolutely essential in professional settings and makes you a much more effective and empathetic communicator. Now let's move on to something fun, a vocabulary upgrade drill. The key here, as we've discussed, is not just to learn bigger words, but to learn words that are more precise and that fit naturally into the context. Using a very fancy word in a simple, casual conversation can sound strange or even arrogant. The goal is precision. Let's take the common word big. Instead of always saying big, you have a whole menu of other options depending on what you precisely mean. If you're talking about a building, you might say it's enormous or massive. If you're talking about a problem, you might say it's a substantial problem or a significant challenge. If you're talking about a difference between two things, you could call it a considerable difference. Let's take another common word, small. Instead of just small, you could say something is tiny if it's really, really small, like a tiny insect. You could say a detail is minute if it's very fine and requires close attention. Or you could say someone's contribution was insignificant if it had almost no effect. Let's try one more. The word help. A great simple word. But you could also use assist, which is a little more formal, perfect for a professional context, like in, could you assist me with this report? You could use support, which often implies emotional or long-term help, like thank you for supporting me through that difficult time. Or you could use aid, which is often used in more serious, large-scale situations, like the organization provides humanitarian aid to disaster victims. Let's put this into practice. I'll say a simple sentence, and I want you to say it back using one of the more advanced, precise alternatives we just discussed. Ready? The simple sentence is, the company made a big profit this year. Wachi. How could you upgrade that to sound more professional? Saus. You could say, the company made a substantial profit this year. So, or even a considerable profit. Let's try another. The simple sentence is, can you help me with this? A more formal version, perhaps for an email to a new colleague, would be, could you assist me with this? Your turn. Say it out loud with a polite professional tone. Could you assist me with this? Fantastic. This practice of consciously choosing a more precise word, of pausing for just a millisecond to select the best option from your mental vocabulary, will gradually and powerfully build your active vocabulary. When practicing advanced English, you also need to focus intently on tone and politeness strategies. In many cultures, being very direct is a sign of honesty and efficiency. In English-speaking cultures, especially in the United States, unfiltered directness can sometimes be perceived as rude, aggressive, or even disrespectful, particularly in professional or new social situations. How you say something is often just as important as what you say. For example, the command, "Close the window," is perfectly clear grammatically, but it can sound a bit demanding, like an order from a superior to a subordinate. An advanced speaker would almost automatically soften this request. They might say, "Would you mind closing the window?" Or, a little more casually but still polite, "Could you close the window, please?" This simple change from a direct command to a polite question makes the request feel softer, more respectful, and gives the other person a sense of choice, even if it's just a social formality. Let's do a quick role-play exercise to get a feel for this. Imagine you are in a team meeting, and a colleague, let's call her Maria, suggests an idea that you genuinely think won't work. Your first instinct might be to say, "You're wrong," or "That's a bad idea." But that would likely make Maria feel defensive, embarrassed, and could damage your working relationship. Instead, an advanced speaker would use polite disagreement strategies. You could start by acknowledging her contribution, showing that you value her input. You might say, "I see where you're coming from, Maria, and that's a valid point. However, I have a slightly different perspective on this." Another excellent phrase is, "That's an interesting point, and I appreciate you bringing it up." Perhaps we could also consider another approach. Notice how both of these phrases validate the other person's input. Valid point, interesting point, before introducing your own idea. This makes your disagreement feel collaborative, like you're working together to find the best solution, rather than confrontational. Let's practice saying those two phrases. Try to use a respectful and thoughtful tone. First one, "I see where you're coming from, but I have a different perspective." Now the second one, "That's an interesting point, but perhaps we could also consider another approach." Using these phrases will make you sound much more diplomatic, professional, and ultimately, more persuasive. Finally, for this section, let's talk about the pace of your speech. Many English learners fall into the trap of believing that speaking fast makes them sound more fluent and advanced. In reality, the opposite is often true. Speaking too quickly can make you harder to understand. It can cause you to make more mistakes, and it can even make you sound nervous or insecure. True advanced speakers don't rush. They speak with clarity, confidence, and precision. They use pauses strategically. A pause is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of control. A pause can give your listener a moment to absorb a complex idea you've just shared. It can also be used for dramatic emphasis, right before you share your most important point. Native speakers use rhythm and stress to make their message clear. They emphasize the important words in a sentence, the content words, and glide over the less important ones. Think of it like music. There is a beat, a rhythm, a melody. Rushing through your words is like playing a song too fast. All the beautiful notes get jumbled together into noise. In this masterclass, we will practice speaking at a natural, comfortable pace with just the right amount of pauses to let our words land with impact. Don't be afraid of silence. A short, well-placed pause is one of the most powerful communication tools you have. One of the biggest and perhaps most difficult hurdles to reaching advanced fluency is the habit of translating in your head. When you think in your native language and then mentally translate to English before you speak, you're doing double the work. This process is slow. It's mentally exhausting, and it often results in sentences that sound unnatural because grammar, sentence structures, and idiomatic expressions are different across languages. Advanced speakers think directly in English. This allows them to respond quickly, spontaneously, and naturally in conversations, making dialogue feel effortless. So how do you train your brain to do this? You have to build a new habit, and you can start with a very simple daily practice. Start describing the world around you, but do it silently, in your head, in English. This is your secret training ground. For example, when you're walking to work or sitting in a coffee shop, just observe and narrate the world to yourself. You see a busy street. In your mind, you can think, the street is absolutely crowded with people rushing to their destinations. The morning sun is reflecting off the tall glass buildings. I wonder where they are all going in such a hurry. You see a child eating an ice cream cone. You might think to yourself, that little boy looks so delighted as he takes each bite of his chocolate ice cream cone. He has a little smudge of it on his nose. The chocolate is dripping down the side. The key is to use rich, descriptive language. Don't just think, it's a tree. Think, the tall, old oak tree on the corner has thick, gnarled branches that are covered in vibrant green leaves. It must be hundreds of years old. The more you do this, the more you build and strengthen the mental pathways for thinking in English, and the easier and more automatic it becomes to form advanced sentences naturally when you actually need to speak. Let's try this together right now. I'll give you a basic thought in simple English, and I want you to try and upgrade it to something more descriptive and advanced. I'll give you a moment to think before I give you my version. The basic thought is, it's a nice day. What could you say that's more descriptive, that paints a picture? You could say, it's a pleasantly warm day with a soft breeze moving through the trees and not a single cloud in the sky. Let's try another one. The basic thought is, she is tired. How could you upgrade that to be more specific and evocative? You might say, she looks completely drained after such a long day at work. You can see the exhaustion in her eyes. Or, she appears to be utterly exhausted, barely able to keep her head up. Now, I want you to repeat my advanced versions after me and really try to match the rhythm and the descriptive feel of the sentences. First one. It's a pleasantly warm day with a soft breeze moving through the trees. And the second one, she looks completely drained after such a long day at work. This internal monologue, this private narration of your world, is an incredibly powerful exercise to make English your language of thought, not just a language of translation. Another essential skill for making your English sound truly advanced is mastering idiomatic expressions. Idioms are those colorful, creative phrases where the meaning of the phrase as a whole is different from the literal meaning of the individual words. For example, the idiom to break the ice has absolutely nothing to do with breaking actual frozen water. It means to say or do something to start a conversation in a social setting, to relieve tension and make people feel more comfortable. Using idioms correctly and naturally shows a deep, nuanced understanding of the language and the culture it comes from. It makes your English sound more authentic, more native-like, and more engaging. Some common examples you might hear in everyday American life are to bite the bullet, which means to finally decide to do something difficult that you've been avoiding or putting off, or to see eye to eye, which means to agree with someone completely, or to be on the ball, which means to be quick to understand and react to things. Let's practice using a few idioms in full, natural sentences. It's crucial to learn them in context so you understand how they are used. Repeat these after me, trying to capture the feeling of the phrase. Let's start with break the ice. At the start of the workshop, the instructor told a funny story to break the ice and get everyone talking. Now let's try another one. Sweeten the deal, which means to add something extra to an offer to make it more attractive or persuasive. The company decided to sweeten the deal by offering a free extended warranty with the purchase. And one more, hit the nail on the head. This is a great one. It means to describe a situation or a problem exactly and correctly. When you said the real problem was a lack of communication, you really hit the nail on the head. These idioms, when used in the right situation, can make your English much more vivid, memorable, and expressive. Now, let's put these idioms into a short role-play scenario. Imagine you're talking to a friend about starting a new project together. I'll play the friend and you can play yourself, trying to use the idioms we just practiced. Your friend says, "I'm a little nervous about meeting the new team members for the first time. I'm not great at small talk. What could you say using break the ice?" You could reply, "Don't worry about it. I'll help you break the ice with a few introductions and some easy questions." Now, your friend says, "I'm not sure they'll accept our first offer. It might be a little too low when they have other options." How could you use sweeten the deal? Jut. You might say, "Well, if they hesitate, maybe we can sweeten the deal by offering a small discount for their first order or promising a faster delivery time." Finally, your friend describes a problem with the project plan, and you realize they've perfectly identified the main weakness. You could say, "You've hit the nail on the head. That's the exact issue we need to solve." This kind of mental practice, imagining real-life situations where you would use these phrases, helps you to recall and use them more easily and spontaneously in real conversations. Advanced English also involves being able to effortlessly shift your level of formality, what linguists call register, depending on the social setting. This is like being a social chameleon. In casual conversations with friends or family, using contractions like I'm, don't, and can't is completely natural and expected. In fact, not using them can make you sound a bit stiff, formal, or even robotic. However, in very formal writing, like an academic paper, a business proposal, or a legal document, or in a very formal speech, you might choose to use the full forms I am, do not, or cannot for added clarity and emphasis. The key is knowing which style is appropriate for the situation and being able to switch between them seamlessly. It's about being flexible and socially aware. Let's practice switching between these two styles. I'll say the informal version first and then the more formal equivalent. I want you to repeat both after me and notice the subtle but important change in tone. Informal. I'm happy to help out. Say formal. I am pleased to offer my assistance. Let's try another. Informal. We just don't have enough time to get it done. Formal. Unfortunately, we do not have sufficient time to complete the task. And one more, a common greeting. Informal. Hey, what's up? Formal. Good morning. How are you doing today? Try repeating each of those pairs after me, really feeling the difference in how they sound and imagining the different situations where you might use them. This ability to adapt your language to your audience and environment is a true sign of a sophisticated and advanced speaker. You should also pay very close attention to collocations. Collocations are words that naturally and frequently go together in English, like best friends. For native speakers, these word pairings just sound right, while other combinations, even if they are grammatically correct, just sound wrong or awkward. For example, we say make a decision. We don't say do a decision. We talk about heavy rain, not strong rain. We make progress. We don't do progress. Learning these natural word partnerships is absolutely crucial for sounding fluent. It helps your speech flow more smoothly, and it saves you from having to think about every single word choice, freeing up mental energy to focus on your message. Some other common examples are to take a risk, to catch a cold, to break a promise, and to pay attention. Let's practice upgrading some sentences with more natural and powerful collocations. I'll give you a basic sentence and we'll improve it together. Basic. She gave a good speech. This is okay, but a more natural and advanced way to say this is she delivered a powerful speech. The verb deliver collocates very strongly with speech, presentation, or lecture. Let's try another. Basic. I'm very hungry. This is perfectly fine, of course, but a very common strong collocation for extreme hunger is I'm absolutely starving. It adds much more emphasis and personality. One more. Basic. The company made big changes. A more professional and precise version would be the company implemented significant changes. The verb implement is a great professional collocation for changes, policies, strategies, or plans. Now, repeat each of the advanced versions after me. She delivered a powerful speech. I'm absolutely starving. The company implemented significant changes. Paying attention to these word pairs as you read and listen will greatly improve the naturalness and fluency of your speech. Another way to push your English to a more sophisticated level is to learn and master the use of softeners in hedging language. These are words and phrases that make your statements less direct, less absolute, and therefore more polite, diplomatic, and less confrontational. In American culture, especially in a professional or academic context, avoiding overly strong or absolute statements is very important. It can make you sound arrogant or close-minded. For example, instead of saying, "This is wrong," which can sound accusatory and final, you could soften it by saying, "I'm not sure this is entirely correct." Or, "I think there might be a slight mistake here." Instead of telling someone, "You should do this," which sounds like a command, you could say, "Perhaps you might consider doing this," or a great one is, "Have you thought about trying this?" These small changes make a huge difference in how your message is received. They make your English sound more respectful, more collaborative, and far more persuasive. Let's practice this. I'll give you a very direct, blunt sentence, and I want you to repeat the softened, more diplomatic version after me. Direct. I can't help you with that. It sounds a bit unhelpful and dismissive. Softened. I'm afraid I won't be able to assist you with that at this moment, but perhaps I can point you in a right direction. It communicates the same core message, but in a much more polite and helpful way. Let's try another. Direct. You are late. This is a direct accusation that can make someone feel defensive, softened. It seems you've arrived a little later than we expected. Is everything okay? It acknowledges the situation without placing blame so harshly and even shows concern. Try repeating the softened versions after me, focusing on a gentle, helpful, and professional tone. I'm afraid I won't be able to assist you with that at this moment. It seems you've arrived a little later than we expected. Mastering this skill of diplomatic communication will make you a much more effective and well-liked communicator in any English-speaking environment. Shadowing, which we touched on earlier, is such an incredibly powerful tool for building advanced fluency that I want to spend a little more time on it. It's more than just repeating. It's about mimicking, about becoming a vocal actor. In this exercise, you listen to a native speaker and you repeat what they say as quickly as possible, trying to copy their exact pronunciation, their intonation, their rhythm, and even the emotion in their voice. It trains your mouth muscles to produce English sounds correctly and automatically. It helps you internalize the natural melody and stress patterns of the language without having to think about grammar rules. It's like learning a song. Let's try a longer, more complex paragraph now. I will say a phrase, and I want you to repeat it immediately after me. Try to be my echo. Ready? Over the past few years, I've come to realize that small, consistent adjustments in the way that I communicate can make an enormous difference in how I'm perceived and understood. By deliberately choosing the right words and by using pauses at the right moments, I can make my intended message much clearer and ultimately far more persuasive. This is precisely the kind of nuanced skill that we are focused on developing in this master class. Excellent. Doing this for just 5 minutes every day with a podcast, a news broadcast, or an audiobook can dramatically and rapidly improve your pronunciation and overall fluency. Let's also work on upgrading your adjectives and adverbs. A very common habit among intermediate learners is to overuse the word very. It was very good. She is very smart. The movie was very bad. While grammatically correct, it's not very descriptive or impactful. Advanced speakers use a wider range of more powerful, precise, and vivid words. Instead of very good, you could say excellent, outstanding, fantastic, or superb. Instead of very bad, you could say terrible, dreadful, awful, or atrocious. Instead of very fast, you could say rapidly or swiftly. This not only makes your vocabulary richer and more impressive, but also makes your speech more impactful and memorable. Let's make a little game out of it. I'll say a sentence with the word very, and I want you to replace it with a stronger, more advanced word. I'll give you a moment to think. The sentence is, "The view from the mountain is very beautiful." What's a better, more powerful word for very beautiful? You could say, "The view from the mountain is breathtaking," or stunning, or spectacular. Let's try another. "He runs very fast." What's a good upgrade for very fast? You could say, "He runs incredibly swiftly," or "He runs at a rapid pace." One more. "I was very surprised by the news. How can we improve this?" We could say, "I was astonished by the news," or "I was stunned by the news." This conscious effort to eliminate very from your speech will force you to expand your vocabulary and make your descriptions more vivid and engaging. Finally, for this part, remember that advanced fluency is not only about speaking, it's about listening. Deep, active, and analytical listening. It's not enough to just understand the basic meaning of the words someone is saying. You need to pay attention to how they are saying them. Listen to podcasts, interviews, and films in English. Pay close attention to how the speakers use pauses for effect, how they use intonation to convey emotion like excitement or sarcasm, and what subtle vocabulary choices they make to be more precise or persuasive. When you hear a phrase, a collocation, or a sentence structure that you like, one that sounds particularly fluent or intelligent, write it down. Say it out loud. Practice it. Try to use it in your own conversations later that day. The best speakers are almost always the best listeners. They are language detectives, constantly learning by absorbing the language that surrounds them. True fluency is a two-way street. It's about both expressing yourself with clarity and understanding others on a deeper, more profound level. One of the strongest markers of truly advanced English is your ability to understand and use nuance. Nuance is that subtle, delicate, almost invisible layer of meaning that changes how your words are received. It's the difference between a photograph in black and white and a high-resolution color photograph with all the shades of gray and every other color in between. Nuance is what allows a native speaker to choose "I'd rather not" instead of "I don't want to." "I don't want to" is very direct and can sound a bit harsh, childish, or final. "I'd rather not," however, is softer, more polite. It expresses a personal preference without being confrontational. Similarly, there's a world of difference between "you're right" and "I see your point." "You're right" means you completely agree, 100%. "I see your point," on the other hand, means you understand their perspective. You acknowledge the validity of their logic, even if you don't fully agree with their conclusion. These small differences carry significant emotional weight, and mastering them can make you sound more diplomatic, more professional, or warmer and more empathetic, depending on your intention. Let's practice injecting more nuance into our speech. I'll give you a very direct, blunt sentence, and you'll rephrase it with more nuance. I'll say it, then you can pause and think, and then repeat my more nuanced version. The direct sentence is, "Stop talking." This is a rude order. How could you say this with more nuance in a professional setting? A more advanced way would be, "Could we possibly continue this conversation a little later? I need to focus on finishing this report right now." It explains the reason without being aggressive and is framed as a polite request. Let's try another. The direct phrase is, "I don't like this." Again, very blunt and potentially hurtful if you're talking about someone's work or a gift. A more nuanced, softer version would be, "It's not quite to my taste." This phrase is very common and expresses a personal preference without judging the thing itself as being objectively bad. Let's repeat these nuanced phrases slowly, paying attention to how they feel softer, more tactful, and more respectful. First, "Could we possibly continue this conversation a little later?" And the second, "It's not quite to my taste." Wonderful. Advanced fluency also involves the art of extending conversations naturally and generously. Many learners, when asked a question, give a short, correct answer and then stop, creating an awkward silence. This can make a conversation feel like an interview or an interrogation, and it puts all the pressure on the other person to keep it going. An advanced speaker, on the other hand, knows how to give an answer and then add a little extra information, a comment or a question to hand the conversational baton back to the other person. A great little formula for this is answer, add, ask. For example, if someone asks, "How was your weekend?" instead of just saying, "It was good," which is a conversational dead end, you can use the formula. Answer, "It was really good, thanks." Add, "I went hiking with some friends on Saturday and the weather was absolutely perfect." Ask, "How about yours? Did you do anything fun?" See how that opens the door for the other person to respond? It keeps the dialogue alive and flowing, and it makes you sound much more engaging, interested, and friendly. Let's try a few of these. I'll ask you a question. I want you to first give a short answer and then think about how you could use the answer, add, ask formula to extend it. The question is, have you seen that new sci-fi movie that just came out? So your short answer could be, "Yes, I have." Now, how can you extend that? Your extended answer could be, "Yes, I have." Answer. The special effects were incredible, though I found the storyline a bit predictable. Add, "Have you watched it yet, or are you planning to?" Ask. That is so much more engaging. It shares your opinion, gives the other person something to respond to, and asks a question back. This simple technique can single-handedly transform your conversational skills from basic to advanced. Another essential part of speaking advanced English is becoming a good storyteller. We are all natural storytellers. Stories are how we connect with each other, share experiences, make information memorable, and build relationships. When you tell a story well in English, you capture your listener's attention and hold it. A good simple story in English usually has a clear beginning that sets the scene. You'll never guess what happened to me yesterday. A sequence of events in the middle that builds some interest and a satisfying conclusion or reflection at the end. You don't need to be a great author. You just need to learn to structure your personal anecdotes clearly and engagingly. Let's do a quick storytelling practice. I'll tell you a very short story about my day. I want you to repeat it after me, focusing on the flow, the pacing, and the connecting words. Last Saturday, I decided to explore a small independent cafe I had never been to before. As soon as I stepped inside, the warm smell of freshly baked bread and rich coffee filled the air. It felt so welcoming. I ordered a cappuccino, and the barista, who had a friendly smile, handed it to me with a beautiful design in the foam. I found a cozy little table by the window and spent the next hour just watching the world go by, sipping my coffee. It turned out to be one of the best cups of coffee I've ever had, and it was such a wonderfully peaceful and relaxing afternoon. Now, I want you to try telling that same story, but in your own words. You can start with, "Jessica told me that last Saturday," and then continue. The goal is to retell the events in a clear, sequential way, maybe even adding a small detail of your own. This kind of practice helps you get comfortable with narrative structure and the past tenses. To move toward advanced fluency, you should also consciously focus on using a wider variety of connectors to link your ideas smoothly. While basic words like and, but, and so are essential, relying on them too heavily can make your speech sound repetitive and simple. Advanced speakers use a broader range of linking words to show more complex and precise relationships between ideas. Words and phrases like however, therefore, on the other hand, as a result, consequently, and meanwhile make your speech flow more logically and sound more academic or professional. Let's take a simple example to see the difference. Basic. I studied hard. I passed the exam. The two ideas are separate, presented as two simple facts. Advanced. I studied hard, and as a result, I passed the exam. The connector, as a result, clearly and explicitly shows the cause and effect relationship. Let's try another. Basic. I wanted to go for a walk. It started raining. Advanced. I wanted to go for a walk, however, it suddenly started raining. The word however shows a clear and immediate contrast between the intention and the reality. Repeat these advanced versions after me, focusing on the rhythm and emphasis that the connector creates. I studied hard, and as a result, I passed the exam. I wanted to go for a walk. However, it started raining. Integrating these more sophisticated connectors will make your arguments and explanations sound much more structured and intelligent. Another powerful strategy to sound more advanced and confident is to actively work on reducing your use of filler words. Filler words are the little sounds and words we use to fill pauses while we're thinking, like, and so. While it's completely natural to use them sometimes, everyone does, even the most eloquent native speakers, overusing them can make you sound hesitant, unprepared, and unsure of what you're saying. The trick is not to eliminate pauses, but to become comfortable with silent pauses. Instead of filling a pause with, just take a quiet moment to breathe and think. A silent pause sounds much more confident and thoughtful than a filled one. You can also use transitional phrases to gracefully give yourself a moment to think, such as, well, let's see. Or, that's an interesting question. Let me think about that for a moment. Or, the way I see it is, let's try this with me. I'll say a sentence filled with common fillers, and then we'll say the clean advanced version together. Basic, I think we should, probably wait until tomorrow to make a decision. Now, let's say it without the fillers, using a confident pause instead to gather our thoughts. Advanced, I think we should wait until tomorrow to make a decision. Notice how removing the fillers makes the sentence sound stronger, clearer, and much more decisive. Practice this by recording yourself speaking for 1 minute on any topic. Listen back and count how often you use filler words. The first step to reducing them is simply becoming aware of when and why you use them. Let's also work on active vocabulary expansion. Advanced speakers don't just know more words, they know when and how to use them with surgical precision. It's about having a rich range of options for a single idea. For example, instead of always saying, get better, you could say improve, progress, or enhance, depending on the specific context. You improve your skills, you make progress on a project, you enhance the quality of a photo. They all have a similar meaning to get better, but they are used in different situations and with different collocations. Similarly, instead of always saying fix, you might use repair for a physical object like a car, restore for something old and valuable like a painting, or resolve for a conflict or a complex problem. Let's do a quick drill to practice this. I'll say a common sentence and you'll upgrade the verb to a more precise, advanced one. The sentence is, we need to fix this problem. What's a better verb for a problem or a conflict? We can say, we need to resolve this issue. Let's try another. I want to get better at cooking. A better verb for skills would be, I want to improve my cooking skills. One more. She's making her English better every day. A great sophisticated word here is enhance. She's enhancing her English skills day by day. Repeat each of the advanced sentences after me, feeling the added layer of precision. We need to resolve this issue. I want to improve my cooking skills. She's enhancing her English skills day by day. Excellent. Another important social skill, especially in dynamic group conversations, is learning how to interrupt politely. In a lively discussion, a fast-paced meeting, or a group conversation, you often need to jump in to share your idea or ask a question. However, a direct interruption like, "Wait, I want to say something," can sound quite rude and disrespectful. An advanced speaker knows how to enter the conversation smoothly and respectfully without disrupting the flow. You can use phrases like, "Sorry to interrupt, but may I add something here really quickly?" Or, "If I could just jump in for a moment, I think that's a great point, and I'd like to add." These phrases are effective because they acknowledge that you are interrupting, which shows respect for the person who is currently speaking. Let's practice saying these polite interruption phrases. Use a friendly, respectful, and energetic tone. Repeat after me. "Sorry to interrupt, but may I share a quick thought on that?" And another one. "If I could just jump in for a second, I'd like to mention that." Using these allows you to be an active, engaged participant in any conversation without seeming impolite, arrogant, or aggressive. Now let's practice summarizing, which is another key advanced communication skill. If a friend or colleague tells you a long, detailed story or explains a complex situation, you can show them you've understood and keep the conversation focused by briefly summarizing their main points. For example, if your friend talks for 2 minutes about how their flight was delayed by 3 hours, then their luggage was lost, and then the hotel was noisy, you might summarize by saying, "Wow, so it sounds like your trip started off with a lot of stressful and frustrating challenges." This does 2 wonderful things. It confirms your understanding, and it shows empathy. It proves you were listening carefully and you care about their experience. Let's try this. I'll give you a short paragraph, and I want you to think of a 1-sentence summary that captures the main idea and feeling. The paragraph is, "I've been working late every single night this week trying to finish this huge project for a new client. On top of that, my boss keeps adding new tasks to my plate without taking anything away, and I honestly haven't had more than 5 hours of sleep any night. I'm starting to make silly mistakes." How would you summarize that person's situation? A good summary would be, "So, to put it mildly, you've been completely overloaded with work and are reaching a point of total exhaustion." Your turn to try summarizing. Think of the last long conversation you had. Can you summarize the main point the other person was making in a single sentence? This is a great mental exercise. As you practice all of these individual skills, please remember that advanced fluency is not something you achieve overnight. It is the result of consistent daily practice, careful and active listening, and a brave willingness to step outside your comfort zone and experiment with new words and structures. Every single time you speak English, you have an opportunity to refine your skills. You are making progress every single day. Now that we have this strong foundation, let's add some even more sophisticated layers to our communication. Let's venture into some territory that will truly set you apart as an advanced C1 level speaker. Let's talk for a moment about advanced grammar, but please, don't think of this as a boring textbook lesson. We're going to talk about how to add mood, drama, and precision to your sentences. Let's start with something called the subjunctive mood. The name sounds technical and intimidating, but the idea is actually quite simple and beautiful. The subjunctive is the mood we use for things that are not real, for wishes, hypothetical situations, dreams, and formal suggestions. It's the what if or I wish mood. For example, in a normal factual sentence in the past, you would say, I was at the party. But if you are wishing, you are entering an unreal, imaginary state. So you would say, I wish I were at the party. That little change from was to were signals to the listener that we have entered an imaginary world. It's a subtle but powerful marker of an advanced speaker. Another common place you'll use it is in hypothetical conditions, especially when giving advice. Instead of saying, if I am you, I will accept the offer, which is grammatically incorrect, you would say, if I were you, I would accept the offer. This immediately tells your listener that you are not them. You are imagining yourself in their position. Let's practice this. Repeat after me. I wish I were able to travel more often. If he were more prepared for the interview, he would feel much more confident. Using this correctly, especially in professional or formal settings, adds a touch of elegance and grammatical precision to your English. Now let's talk about adding a little drama and emphasis through something called inversion. Normally in English, our sentences follow a standard subject-verb order, like, I have never seen such a beautiful sunset. It's perfectly clear and correct. But what if you want to make that sentence more powerful, more poetic, more dramatic? You can use inversion. You flip the sentence structure and say, never have I seen such a beautiful sunset. It has the exact same meaning, but the feeling is completely different. It makes the word never incredibly strong and emphatic. This is often used with negative adverbs and phrases like not only, rarely, seldom, and no sooner. For example, instead of I not only finished my work, but I also helped my colleague, you could say, for powerful emphasis, not only did I finish my work, but I also helped my colleague. This is a fantastic tool for storytelling, public speaking, and formal writing. Let's practice saying these inverted sentences. Feel the dramatic emphasis they create. Repeat after me. Rarely have I eaten such a delicious meal. No sooner had I sat down to relax than the phone rang. Don't overuse this technique, as it is very strong. But when you do use it at the right moment, it will make your audience sit up and listen very carefully. Another powerful speaking technique that advanced communicators use all the time is the rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is a question that you ask without expecting a verbal answer. It sounds a bit strange, right? But you do this to make a point, to engage your listener, or to make them think more deeply. The answer is usually obvious or is implied in the question itself. For example, if you're standing in the pouring rain without an umbrella, you might turn to your friend and say with a sigh, "Could this day get any worse?" You're not actually asking for a list of potential new problems. You're using the question to make a strong point that the day is already very bad. In a presentation, you might use a rhetorical question to introduce a new topic and capture your audience's attention. You could say, so what is the single most important factor for success in language learning? And then you would immediately pause for effect and answer it yourself. It's consistency. This technique pulls your audience in. It makes them feel like they are part of a dialogue, even if they are just listening, because you have prompted them to think. Let's think about how you can use this in a practical situation. Imagine you are trying to convince your team to adopt a new piece of software. Instead of just listing the benefits, you could start with a rhetorical question that highlights a shared frustration. You could ask, how many hours have we all wasted this month on repetitive administrative tasks that could be automated? This gets everyone in the room to nod their heads and think about a shared problem. It creates an immediate connection and a desire for a solution. Then you can present the new software as that solution. Let's practice a few. Imagine you want to emphasize how amazing a recent trip was. You could say to a friend, "Wasn't that the most incredible vacation ever?" Or if you want to make someone gently reconsider a bad idea, you might ask, "Is that really the wisest choice for us right now?" Learning to use these questions effectively will make your speaking more dynamic, more persuasive, and much more engaging for your listeners. Now let's do a deeper dive into something we touched on briefly earlier, using analogies and metaphors. These are not just for poets and writers. They are incredibly powerful tools for advanced communication in everyday life. An analogy or a metaphor takes a complex, abstract, or unfamiliar idea and compares it to something simple, concrete, and familiar. This creates an instant bridge of understanding for your listener, allowing them to grasp a new concept quickly. Think about it. Trying to explain how the internet works to someone in the 1950s would be incredibly difficult. But if you said it's like a giant global library where all the books are instantly connected and you can access any of them from your home, they would instantly get a basic picture of what you mean. Let's imagine a real-world scenario. You're a project manager, and you need to explain a complex 6-month project timeline to a client who isn't familiar with your internal process. Instead of just showing them a confusing chart with lots of technical terms, you could use a powerful analogy. You could say, "You can think of this project like building a house. For the first month, we're laying the foundation. That's our research and planning phase. It's the most critical part, even though you won't see much on the surface. Then, for the next 3 months, we'll be putting up the frame of the house." That's the core development and design work where the structure really takes shape. Finally, the last 2 months are for all the interior details, the painting, the fixtures, the final touches, which represents our final testing, polishing, and training before we officially hand you the keys to your new system. Suddenly, a complicated process becomes a simple, logical, and relatable story that everyone can understand and remember. Creating good analogies is a skill that requires creativity, but you can start by thinking about simple, universal concepts: journeys, building things, cooking, sports, nature. Let's practice creating one. Let's say the topic is managing a team's budget. What's a good analogy for that? Nimalt. You could say, managing the team's budget is like packing for a long trip. You have a suitcase with a limited amount of space, and you have to make careful decisions about which items are absolutely essential and which ones, unfortunately, you have to leave behind. See how that makes the abstract concept of prioritization instantly clear and concrete? Now let's bring many of these skills together to tackle one of the most challenging and important areas of communication: handling difficult or sensitive conversations. This is where advanced English truly shines. It's not just about what you say, but how you say it to preserve relationships, show respect, and achieve a positive, constructive outcome. This is where you will use your softening language, your polite disagreement strategies, your active listening and paraphrasing skills, and your nuance, all at once. Let's create a detailed scenario. Imagine you need to give some constructive criticism to a colleague. Let's call him Kevin. Kevin is a great guy, very creative, but he has been consistently late with his part of a team project, and his delays are affecting everyone else on the team. The wrong way to handle this, the way that would create conflict, would be to go to him and say, "Kevin, you're always late with your work, and you're making the whole team suffer. You need to be faster." This is accusatory. It uses absolute words like always, and it will immediately make him feel defensive and resentful. An advanced communicator, a true leader, would approach this very differently. First, you would choose a private, neutral time to talk, not in front of the team. You might start by framing the conversation positively to show you value him. You could say, "Hey, Kevin, do you have a few minutes to chat about the project? I just wanted to say, your creative ideas for the new design have been a huge help so far." This starts the conversation on a collaborative and appreciative note. Then, instead of using accusatory you statements like "you are late," you would use I statements and focus on the situation and its impact. You might say, "I've noticed that as a team, we've had some challenges meeting the recent deadlines, and personally, I'm starting to feel a bit concerned about our final timeline. I was wondering if we could brainstorm together to see if there's any way we can make the workflow smoother for everyone." Notice the masterful language. I've noticed, I'm feeling, I was wondering. It's about your perception and your feelings, not an attack on his character. This opens the door for a real, honest conversation. He might then feel safe enough to share that he's been overloaded with another urgent project, or that he's struggling with a piece of software. And from there, you can work together to find a solution. This approach transforms a potential conflict into a collaborative problem-solving session. Practicing this kind of empathetic strategic communication is perhaps the ultimate test of advanced fluency. Finally, after all these techniques, rules, and strategies, I want to talk about the most important thing of all, the ultimate goal: developing your own personal speaking style. The goal of learning a language is not to sound like a perfect accent-free robot, or to sound exactly like me, or any other native speaker you happen to hear. The ultimate goal is to sound like you. In English, your unique personality, your particular sense of humor, your unique way of seeing the world. That is your greatest asset as a communicator. Advanced fluency is the moment when the language becomes a tool that is so comfortable in your hands, you can use it to express your authentic self without even thinking about the grammar or the vocabulary. So, how do you do that? First, pay attention to what you enjoy in communication. Do you love telling stories and making people laugh? Then focus on learning the narrative tenses, the expressive vocabulary, and the transition words that make stories great. Do you have a dry, witty sense of humor? Learn the vocabulary and, crucially, the intonation for sarcasm and irony. Are you a very analytical, data-driven person? Then master the language of logic, cause and effect, precision and evidence. Don't try to be someone you're not. If you're a naturally quiet and thoughtful person, you don't need to force yourself to be a loud, energetic, and bubbly speaker. Instead, you can develop a calm, confident, and deeply persuasive style. Your personal style is a unique combination of your word choice, your typical sentence structure, your natural rhythm, and your tone of voice. It's what makes you, you. So as you practice, listen to many different speakers, but don't just copy them. Take what you like, what feels natural to you, and incorporate it into your own voice. The moment you stop worrying about being correct all the time and start focusing on being you is the moment you will make the quantum leap from being a good English speaker to a truly great and memorable one. Once you begin to discover and trust your own unique voice in English, you can start to master some of the most complex and powerful communication strategies of all. Let's begin with understanding the unspoken rules of conversation, starting with a fascinating concept called high context versus low context communication. This is a key idea from intercultural communication that has a huge impact on how we interpret messages. The United States, for the most part, is a low-context culture. This means that communication is expected to be explicit, direct, and clear. The words themselves are expected to carry the vast majority of the meaning. We say what we mean, and we mean what we say. If you need information, you ask for it directly. If you disagree, you state your disagreement, although politely, as we've practiced. The responsibility is on the speaker to communicate their message clearly. However, many other cultures around the world are high context. In these cultures, the meaning of a message is not just in the words, but in the context surrounding them. This includes body language, tone of voice, the relationship between the speakers, social hierarchies, and very importantly, what is not said. Communication is more indirect, more layered, and more nuanced. A direct no might be considered rude or confrontational, so a person might say, "That will be very difficult," or "I will see what I can do," which in their high-context culture clearly means no. Let me tell you a story about a business negotiation that perfectly illustrates this. An American manager, let's call him David, was working with a potential partner from Japan, Mr. Tanaka. David laid out his detailed proposal, and at the end of the meeting he asked, full of American directness, "So, do we have a deal?" Mr. Tanaka was very quiet for a moment, and then he said very slowly and thoughtfully, "This is a very interesting proposal. We will need to give it careful consideration." David, coming from a low-context culture, heard the positive words, "interesting," and "careful consideration," and thought the meeting went very well. He was optimistic. He was therefore completely shocked and confused when he received an email a week later politely declining the offer. What David didn't understand was that in Mr. Tanaka's high-context culture, the lack of an enthusiastic yes, the quiet pause, the non-committal phrase, and the focus on process, consideration, were all clear and polite signals of a no. He was being polite and allowing David to save face by not rejecting him directly. As an advanced speaker in a globalized world, and even within the incredibly diverse society of the USA, understanding the spectrum from low context to high context is crucial. It helps you to not only speak clearly, but also to listen with a third ear, to understand the meaning behind the words. Now let's get very practical and talk about mastering phrasal verbs in professional contexts. Phrasal verbs, those common combinations of a verb and a preposition or adverb, are everywhere in daily English. But at the C1 level, we move beyond just understanding them. We need to use them with precision and confidence, especially in the workplace. Many phrasal verbs have very subtle differences in meaning that can change everything. For example, let's take the common verb take. To take on a project means to accept responsibility for it. To take up a task means to begin doing it. And to take over a role means to replace someone in that position. They are all similar, but they are not interchangeable. Imagine a team meeting. The manager might say, "For this next phase, I need someone to take on the responsibility for the client presentation." A team member could then volunteer by saying, "I'd be happy to take that on." The manager might then reply, "Great. You can take up the work of gathering the initial data immediately. You will officially take over the lead role on this from Sarah, who is moving to another department." Let's organize our practice by function, which is a great way to learn them. For project management, you might need to draw up a plan, which means to prepare a formal written document, set up a meeting to arrange it, carry out the tasks to perform or execute them, and finally, wrap up the project to finish it. Let's practice a sentence with each of these. Repeat after me. First, we need to draw up a detailed project timeline and budget. C, could you please set up a conference call with the technical team for tomorrow morning? The engineering department is ready to carry out the next phase of the plan. Let's aim to wrap up the final report by the end of the week. For negotiations, you might hear phrases like give in, to surrender on a point, stand up to someone, to defend your position against them, back down, to withdraw your claim, or work out a compromise, to find a mutual solution. Using these accurately and confidently doesn't just show your vocabulary, it shows you are fluent in the culture and jargon of the modern workplace. The next time you are in a meeting or reading a business email, go on a phrasal verb hunt. Pay close attention to the ones being used, write them down in their full sentences, and practice using them yourself. Let's move to an even higher level of persuasive communication, the powerful art of concession and refutation. This is a sophisticated strategy used in debates, formal arguments, negotiations, and important meetings. It involves a strategic two-step process. First, you concede, which means you acknowledge a valid point made by the other person. You find some truth in their argument and you agree with that small part. This is a very disarming and intelligent move. It makes you sound reasonable, fair, and it shows that you have been listening carefully. It instantly lowers the other person's defenses because you are not attacking them. Then, immediately after conceding, you refute. This is where you present your counter-argument, often using a powerful transition word like however, but, that being said, or while that may be true. This structure makes your own point seem even stronger by contrast because you have already considered and acknowledged the opposition's viewpoint. Let's imagine a clear scenario. Your team is debating whether to invest in a new expensive piece of software. Your colleague argues against it. She says, "This software is far too expensive. It will completely destroy our budget for this quarter, and we can manage perfectly fine with our current tools." Instead of just saying, "You're wrong, it's a good investment," you can use the concession and refutation technique. You could say, You're absolutely right. The initial cost is indeed quite high, and I completely agree that we need to be very careful and responsible with our budget. That's the concession. You've agreed with her main point. She feels heard and validated. Now, the powerful refutation. However, if we look at the amount of time we would save on manual data entry, which is at least 10 hours a week for the entire team, the software would actually pay for itself within 6 months. The long-term efficiency gain and reduction in errors far outweighs the short-term cost. See how powerful that is? You've taken her argument, validated it, and then skillfully turned it around to support your own position. Let's practice the structure. I'll give you a point of opposition, and you try to form a concession refutation response. The point is, we shouldn't launch the new product in the summer because sales are always slow then. Your response could be, I understand your concern about a summer launch, and it's certainly true that sales are traditionally slower during that season. On the other hand, launching in the summer when the market is less crowded would give us a huge head start on our competitors, who all wait for the fall, allowing us to capture all the early media attention. Practice this structure. It will elevate your persuasive speaking to an entirely new and impressive level. We've talked a lot about the words you choose, but advanced communication is also about the music of your voice. So let's do a deep dive into using vocal variety and prosody for maximum engagement. Prosody is a technical term for the rhythm, stress, and intonation of speech. Essentially, it's musicality. Varying your prosody is what makes you sound interesting, passionate, and engaging, rather than flat, boring, and monotonous. It involves 4 key elements that you can control: pitch, how high or low your voice is; tempo, how fast or slow you speak; rhythm, the pattern of stressed and unstressed words in a sentence; and loudness, your volume. Advanced speakers manipulate these elements, often unconsciously, to convey subtle layers of emotion and meaning. For example, you might speed up your tempo when telling an exciting part of a story, and then dramatically slow down when explaining a very serious or complex point. You might raise your pitch at the end of a question to signal curiosity and lower it to signal the end of a firm statement. You can use a louder volume for emphasis and a softer, quieter volume to create a sense of intimacy or confidentiality with your listener. Sarcasm is almost entirely communicated through prosody, a flat, slow, and often exaggerated delivery of words that are usually positive, like, "Oh, that's just great." Let's do a fascinating exercise. I am going to give you a very simple sentence. I never said she stole the money. I want you to say this sentence out loud 5 times. Each time, I want you to emphasize a different word and think about how it completely changes the meaning of the sentence. First, emphasize I. I never said she stole the money. This implies someone else said it, but not me. Now, emphasize never. I never said she stole the money. This is a strong denial. You are strongly denying you ever said it at any time. Now, emphasize said. I never said she stole the money. This implies I might have implied it or written it or thought it, but I didn't say it out loud. Now, emphasize she. I never said she stole the money. This implies I said someone else stole it, maybe the other person. Finally, emphasize money. I never said she stole the money. This implies she stole something else, like the jewelry, but not the money. That one simple sentence has at least 5 completely different meanings, all based on prosody. This is the incredible power you have in your voice. Practice this by recording yourself reading a paragraph from a book. Read it once in a flat, monotone voice. Then read it again, pretending you are a news anchor, then a storyteller reading to children, then a lawyer making a final, passionate argument to a jury. Pay attention to how your pitch, tempo, and rhythm change. Becoming a master of your own vocal instrument is a hallmark of a truly advanced and captivating speaker. Let's now explore the very foundation of how we think and speak about abstract ideas with a topic I call abstract language and conceptual metaphors. This might sound very academic, but it's one of the most practical and fascinating things you can learn about the deep structure of the English language. It's the secret code behind thousands of idioms and everyday expressions. In our minds, we unconsciously structure abstract concepts like love, time, or ideas in terms of more concrete, physical concepts like journeys, money, or food. For example, a very common conceptual metaphor in English is argument is war. We don't consciously think this, but the language we use to talk about arguments is filled with words of warfare. Think about it. You can win or lose an argument. You have to defend your position. You can attack someone's weak points. An idea can be shot down. Your claims should be indefensible. This conceptual metaphor gives rise to dozens of common phrases. Once you see these patterns, you'll see them everywhere. Another huge one, especially prevalent in American culture, is time is money. We talk about spending time, wasting time, investing time, budgeting our time. We say, that meeting cost me an hour. We ask if something is worth our while. This metaphor shapes our entire cultural attitude towards time as a limited and valuable resource. Another one is ideas are food. You might hear someone say, "That's an interesting idea. It gives me food for thought." Or, "I need some more time to digest all that information." Or, when talking about a difficult concept, "I just can't swallow that explanation." Understanding these underlying conceptual metaphors doesn't just help you understand a few idioms. It allows you to speak more fluently and creatively because you understand the deep logic system that the language is built on. Let's practice. Think about the conceptual metaphor. Life is a journey. What are some common English phrases that come from this deep metaphor? You might think of, "He's at a crossroads in his life." "I don't know where I'm going in my career." "She has come a long way since she started." "Don't look back. You're not going that way." Recognizing these deep metaphors is like having a backstage pass to the English language. It allows you to understand not just what people are saying, but how they are thinking. Finally, let's revisit storytelling, but at a C1 Advanced level. It's time to move beyond a simple beginning, middle, and end, and into advanced storytelling with narrative arc and emotional pacing. All compelling stories, from a Hollywood movie to a simple anecdote you tell a friend over dinner, follow a similar pattern called the narrative arc. It starts with an exposition, where you set the scene and introduce the characters. Then, there's an inciting incident, the event that kicks off the story and creates a problem or a goal. This leads to the rising action, a series of events where the tension builds and the stakes get higher. This tension culminates in the climax, the peak of the story, the moment of greatest conflict or discovery. After the climax, there's the falling action, where things start to wind down and the consequences of the climax become clear. And finally, there's the resolution, where the story concludes and you share the lesson learned or the final outcome. Let's apply this advanced structure to a simple story about a work project. Exposition. Last year, my team was working on a really important presentation for a huge potential client. Our team leader, Sarah, was incredibly meticulous. Inciting incident. The day before the presentation was due, our main computer crashed, and we discovered that the only copy of the entire file was gone. Rising action. Absolute panic set in. We stayed up all night at the office, frantically trying to recreate the entire presentation from our old notes and memory, dividing up the work, drinking endless cups of terrible coffee. The pressure was immense. Climax. At 5 a.m., just as we were losing all hope, our IT specialist, a very quiet guy named Tom, who usually never spoke, remembered something. He found a hidden automatic backup on a forgotten server from the day before. He calmly restored the file and saved the entire project. Falling action. We quickly reviewed the restored file, made a few small improvements with the little time we had left, and walked into the presentation running on pure adrenaline and gratitude. Resolution. We ended up winning the contract. And we learned two things. Never ever rely on a single file, and that the quietest person in the room can sometimes be the biggest hero. See how that structure creates a much more dramatic and satisfying story? But structure is only half of it. The other half is emotional pacing. You control the listener's emotions by varying your tempo and level of detail. During the rising action, you might speak faster, using shorter, more urgent sentences to convey the sense of panic. When you get to the climax, you might slow right down, pausing dramatically right before the key moment. And then, Tom found the file to build suspense. During the resolution, your tone might become more reflective, calmer, and more thoughtful. Mastering this powerful combination of narrative structure and emotional pacing is what separates a simple speaker from a truly captivating storyteller. The next time you tell a story, even a small one about your weekend, think about the narrative arc. Think about how you can use your voice and your pacing to make your listener feel what you felt. We have now journeyed through the deepest and most intricate aspects of advanced English communication, from the unspoken rules of cultural context to the very music of your voice, from the powerful logic of debate to the emotional structure of a captivating story. These are the skills that lie at the peak of the mountain of fluency. They are challenging, yes, but they are also what make communication a true art form. We have come to the end of our masterclass. We have journeyed from the basic building blocks of what makes speech sound advanced, all the way to the subtle arts of nuance, persuasion, and authentic self-expression. You have practiced upgrading your vocabulary, mastering politeness, structuring your thoughts, telling stories, and even using advanced grammar with confidence. The sheer number of tools and techniques we've covered today might feel overwhelming, but please don't let it. You don't need to master everything at once. True fluency is not about perfection, it's about connection. It's about being able to share your ideas, understand others, and navigate any conversation with grace and confidence. Your journey doesn't end here. In fact, it's just the real beginning. I want you to think of this master class as a map. You now have the map and you know the path forward. The next step is to walk it day by day. Choose one skill we discussed today. Just one. And focus on using it this week. Maybe it's trying to use the concession-refutation structure in a discussion at work. Maybe it's paying attention to the conceptual metaphors you hear in a movie. Maybe it's just practicing your vocal variety by reading a story out loud to yourself. Small, consistent, and focused efforts are what build lasting, unshakable fluency. Thank you truly for joining me and for dedicating this significant amount of time to your own growth and development. You have taken a massive step toward becoming the kind of speaker who not only knows the right words, but also knows how to deliver them with purpose, personality, and impact. I look forward to speaking with you again in our next lesson. Until then, keep practicing, stay curious, and always remember that your voice is valuable and your story is worth sharing. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe and click that bell notification. That way, you and I can continue this incredible journey together every single day. Keep up the fantastic work.